Hello, I'm Robert Santos, Director of the U.S. Census Bureau. Thank you for joining us for an update on the 2030 Census Federal Register Notice. Right now, we're seeking your ideas about what to research and how to conduct the 2030 census. Why are we doing this? The answer is simple. When we concluded the 2020 census a couple of years ago, in the midst of a pandemic, we realized that the degree to which we were successful was because of you, our partners, our stakeholders, our community leaders, and the public. We understood that we needed your help to conduct the census. So we listened and we learned. We know that you too learned from this unprecedented time in the history of our country. We realize you, the public, can offer much knowledge and insight into our planning process to make it even better. That's why we are actively seeking your input. We need diverse voices and perspectives to make the 2030 census the best that it can be. That way, your community can receive all the information and benefits that come with a complete count of your population. On August 17th, we issued a Federal Register notice, basically a call for your ideas, requesting the public's input on the planning and design of the 2030 census. And guess what? We've already received about 2,000 ideas from the public, so thank you for that. And the best part is that there's still time to share your thoughts with us. We especially welcome your feedback on how to improve people's experience when they are completing the census. Your input will inform our decisions for 2030, including our research, our testing, and design. We are committed to counting everyone, including historically undercounted populations. And like the 2020 census experience, we need your help to be successful. You know, each decennial census takes over a decade of planning and preparation. It's critical to get public input early in the decade and to hear from as many people and communities as possible. Of course, we will keep talking to communities as we progress through the decade, but now is the best time to make the biggest impact on our research and our operational design. I can't thank you enough for coming along and helping us write the story of the 2030 census, from the design to its future execution. This is deeply important work. We're literally advancing our democracy. We're fulfilling the charge bestowed upon us by our wonderful U.S. Constitution. It's a labor of love, and I'm proud that we are formally engaging the public this early in the process. I appreciate your support and enthusiasm and look forward to receiving your ideas. Now I'll turn it over to Jennifer Reichert for an overview of our 2030 census research. Thank you.
The Census Bureau plans to build on the experiences of the 2020 census and identify further potential operational updates to develop the 2030 census design. Early planning for the 2030 census is now underway and includes conducting research and testing to inform the selection of the 2030 census operational design. This design will have to address multiple factors, including constrained fiscal environment. Budget uncertainties place significant pressure on funding available for the research, testing, design, and development work. Rapidly changing use of technology. The rapid pace of change in the use of technology makes it challenging to plan for and adequately test the use of technologies before they become obsolete. Distrust in government. Concerns about the security and privacy of information given to the government impact response rates and pose difficulties in data collection. Declining response rates. Response rates for surveys and censuses have declined as people are overloaded with requests for information and concerned about privacy. Increasingly diverse population. The demographic and cultural makeup of the United States is increasing in complexity, requiring tailored outreach efforts to encourage response. Informal, complex living arrangements. households are becoming more diverse and dynamic, making it a challenge to associate an identified person with a single location. A mobile population. The United States continues to be a highly mobile nation, which makes it more challenging to locate individuals and solicit their participation. The process of planning a census includes years of research and testing to prepare for the complex task of counting everyone in the United States. In the current design selection phase, we are currently in various stages of developing around 50 research projects that are grouped in 5 focus areas that we call enhancement areas, or EAs. These EAs help drive our vision of enhancing the science of census taking. They are based on our experiences and lessons learned from the 2020 census. This is different than the research motivation from recent decades, where our research agendas were more driven by the pursuit of cost savings. While it is always an important goal of the Census Bureau to increase efficiency and reduce the cost of the census, designing our research agenda around our experiences and lessons learned opens up new and exciting avenues of research. Let me now walk you through each of the EAs. Our first EA, EA1, Data Collection, is focused on enhancements to our data collection methods and operations, motivated by our need to address data quality issues and gaps. This EA currently has 18 research projects. EA1 covers research related to identifying the best contact methods and data collection strategies for specific population groups, particularly our historically undercounted populations. We have projects aimed at improving our engagement and outreach to communities and historically undercounted populations. We will also continue to increase automation in our data collection operations to reduce respondent burden and improve efficiency. Our second EA, EA2, Modernize Group Quarters Enumeration, is focused on our work with group quarters, or GQs, which are places where people live or stay in a group living environment, such as a college dormitory or a nursing home. This EA currently has 7 research projects. GQs were a particular challenge for us in the 2020 census due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on these populations, such as college students moving back home when the schools and dormitories closed. While GQ residents only represent a small proportion of the population, they are a unique population that must be handled with specialized methods and operations. As part of our research, we will build a good inventory of GQ facilities to ensure an accurate enumeration of the residents. We will also research ways to improve data collection methods for GQs, to improve data quality and reduce the burden on GQ facilities and residents. Our early efforts will build partnerships with the GQ community and their advocates. Our third EA, EA3, Integrate Data Collection and Processing in Real Time, focuses on the enormous task of processing all the data we collect for the decennial census. This EA currently has 11 research projects. Historically, the design of the census has included a 3 to 5 month period after data collection to process the data from all operations to develop data products. This presented challenges during the 2020 census as data collection operations experienced significant delays and extensions due to the pandemic. Our research in this EA seeks to identify ways to conduct data processing in real time during data collection, rather than waiting until the end. By doing our processing in real time, we will be able to identify and address data quality issues during data collection, while there are still more opportunities available to fix the issues. This research will streamline data processing activities to accelerate the development of data products. We will also research ways to enhance our reporting on progress throughout data collection and processing. Having all of the processed data available during data collection creates the framework for making data-driven decisions about collection efforts and resources. Our fourth EA, EA4, Streamline Operational Support Infrastructure, involves research to improve the support infrastructure for the 2030 census. This EA currently has 6 research projects. While the COVID-19 pandemic created many challenges for the 2020 census, it also highlighted opportunities for future planning. In particular, we learned that many activities can be done remotely, which is a valuable lesson as we look to the 2030 census. This EA includes projects to re-envision the office structure and the use of automation for field operations and other respondent assistance activities. The 2020 census experienced challenges when trying to hire the hundreds of thousands of people it takes to conduct and manage the census operations and activities. This EA will research ways to streamline and automate recruiting, hiring, and payroll services to increase efficiency and facilitate large-scale staffing for our peak operations. Our final EA, EA5, Continuous Data Collection and Aggregation, is about thinking of the census as an ongoing program that is built across the decade rather than only conducted at the end of the decade. This EA currently has 8 research projects. One of the biggest successes of the 2020 census was that we conducted most of our address list development work throughout the decade. This resulted in only having to go to the field to update about 35% of the addresses, as opposed to 100% in previous censuses. This EA will research ways to apply a similar strategy to data collection, decreasing the amount of work necessary at the end of the decade. This research will identify and procure new administrative records data to increase coverage for all populations. By using administrative data to enumerate the majority of the population, we could devote resources at the end of the decade to ensure that we count those populations that aren't well represented in administrative data, particularly the historically undercounted populations. This EA will establish the ability to continuously develop and assess population estimates from administrative data across the decade to identify the coverage and quality gaps. Now that we have gone over the EAs, let me walk you through the preliminary timeline of 2030 census planning. We're just starting to map out what the 2030 census will look like. The operational design, communications plans, and a comprehensive timeline are not available yet, as we want to ensure we consider your ideas as we develop our plans. To give a general idea, you can see on this timeline that planning for the 2030 census began in October 2018 with the early planning phase. This phase provided a foundational starting point for the 2030 census. For 3 years, the Census Bureau examined the 2020 census design to assess potential enhancements for the next decennial count. We are now in the design selection phase. This phase includes research, testing, and operational planning and design work to inform the selection of the initial 2030 census operational design. This is also the ideal time to engage with the public to gather input related to 2030 research and planning, specifically on how we can improve our operations for the 2030 census. The input we receive will help us identify new research projects and enhance our existing projects, which will lead us to our initial design for the 2030 census. The final planning phase is scheduled to start in 2025. After the initial operational design is developed, the Census Bureau will continue to develop our detailed operational plans and conduct tests as needed to ensure the census produces quality, useful information for the nation. Additional details will be provided as these become available. I want to note that the 2030 design will outline the big picture plan for conducting the 2030 census. To develop the design, we will factor in public feedback, new research, past census experiences and lessons learned, evolving technology, and the changing world. To learn from the 2020 census, we are doing a deep dive on 2020 census data quality. This involves evaluating operational quality metrics, analyzing the results of the 2020 demographic analysis and post-enumeration survey, thoroughly reviewing census operations, and asking outside experts to independently review our work. As part of our design selection phase, we published a Federal Register notice, also referred to as an FRN, to ask the public for feedback and ideas to help us plan the 2030 census design. Through the FRN, the public is invited to share feedback on how the Census Bureau can improve people's experience during the 2030 census. Now is the time to gather input that may shape the census operational design. We're on this journey together, and your thoughts are key to our success. Because of the time frame I just outlined, we will be limited in what we can change later, so now is the time to join the conversation. On August 17th, the Census Bureau issued the FRN to engage with the public to provide input related to 2030 research and planning, specifically on how we can improve our operations for the 2030 census. The comment period is open until November 15th. We are requesting your input on 5 specific categories that are highlighted in the FRN. The categories are reaching and motivating everyone, technology, new data sources, how we contact respondents, respondent support services. I will now explain each category in detail. The first category is reaching and motivating everyone. We want your input on how we can reach everyone more effectively. We're interested in hearing your ideas about ways to reverse the trend of undercounting certain populations. We want to hear directly from communities who have been historically undercounted, as well as partners and stakeholders, and we encourage you to help us spread the word about the opportunity to weigh in and become part of the conversation. We also want to hear your ideas about technology and new data sources, which are the next two categories outlined in the FRN. Share your ideas on technological advances that could make responding to the census more user-friendly. This could be ideas on how to make it easier for people to respond on their own, or how to make it easier to collect data in person when necessary. What additional data sources and methods for using them could increase operational efficiency for the census, as well as improve data quality? Simply put, what data sources should we use and how? We also want to hear your ideas about how we contact respondents and how we provide respondent support services, which are the final categories outlined in the FRN. Share your ideas on how we contact households to encourage them to respond to the census on their own. What tools and messages should we use to invite people to respond, especially historically undercounted populations? How often should we reach out to each household? Finally, how can we support people as they respond to their census, whether online, by phone, by mail, in English, or in another language? What are the public's needs when responding to the census, especially historically undercounted populations? How can we increase access for people with disabilities? Now let's talk about the feedback we have received so far. Many of you have already responded to our call for ideas, as we have received about 2,000 comments. Thank you. We're busy reviewing each and every one of these comments. Of the comments reviewed so far, most, about 70%, fall into one of three categories: questionnaire content, reaching and motivating everyone, and field operational management, mainly submitted by former census field workers. On the other end of the spectrum, we've received only a few comments on technology, how we contact respondents, new data sources, and respondent support services. Combined, comments on these four categories total about 20%. Now that you've seen the breakdown of the types of comments we have received, let me share some examples that illustrate what we've been hearing. I will begin with the category that has received most comments, then work in descending order. As I mentioned, most of the comments we've received in the 5 FRN categories are in the Reaching and Motivating Everyone category. These include recommendations to partner with programs that serve historically undercounted populations, school districts, adult literacy, and adult basic education programs. Partner with schools and children's TV shows to reach households with young children. Find ways to incentivize early response to the census. On the technology category, we've received recommendations about using tablets when collecting data from households and using QR codes to access the census questionnaire on mobile devices. Other recommendations include partnering with tech companies to ensure that the technology used is current and eases the burden on those who are conducting fieldwork. In the How to Contact Respondents category, recommendations include hiring people from historically undercounted communities to conduct the census. In the Respondent Support Services category, recommendations include additional non-English language support and live help through chat applications. In the New Data Sources category, recommendations include collecting census responses as people submit their taxes or using utilities data, for example, electric companies. In addition to the 5 categories outlined in the FRN, we have received input in other topics that I would like to highlight. We have received input on how we can improve the census questionnaire content. We have received comments from former census workers about how we can improve field processes, such as improving enumerator applications and allowing them to work in pairs. Other comments include making changes to data tables. As I mentioned, we need additional feedback from you, and there is still time. We encourage everyone to provide comments. Remember, we are looking for new and innovative ways of conducting the census. You can share your comments and recommendations until November 15th by emailing them to dcmd.2030.research@census.gov or visiting census.gov/2030census. From there, you can submit your comments online through the Federal Register notice. Now is the time to gather input that may shape the census operational design. We're on this journey together, and your thoughts are key to our success.